Hello and welcome to those of you joining us on Lincolnshire Reporter. My name is Stefan Pidluzhny and with me for the fourth in our series of live Facebook chats with the candidates standing in the Sleaford North Hykeham by-election is Peter Hill from the Monster Raving Loony Party.
Now, can I just correct you there?
Of course you can, yes.
Once again, thank you very much indeed for inviting me here, but when I'm standing in general and by-elections for the Monster Raving Loony Party, I am known as the Iconic Arty Pole.
And where does that name come from?
It's a long story.
Can you
which
tell
I
it
won't
quickly?
bore you with. Many years ago, when I was writing for magazines, I had a byline which was r.t.pole. We couldn't do it as an email address, so it became Arty Pole. And as there's only one of me, I must be iconic. Right,
okay. Well, that's certainly an interesting story as well. I must say I also feel a bit like I've been outshone in terms of outfits as well today. With the Monster Raving Loony Party then, sort of a lot said about them, is it right to associate you with things like, I don't know, the 99p coin?
Well, of course it is. Everybody thinks we should have one.
What happens if supermarkets charge everything at 98p though?
The charities will still get the 1 penny change.
And what else should we associate you and the Monster Raving Loony Party
with?
Well,
there's been so many things over the years, like 24-hour pub opening, passports for dogs, to name two of our more successful things. And of course, my own favourite at the minute is the establishing of protected species on unicorns.
Do unicorns exist?
Have you ever seen one?
No.
And I'll tell you why. They're magical, mystical animals that make themselves invisible so they don't get shot. If they're protective species...
so they're very clever then?
Well, they are very clever. That's why you've never seen one.
It must be the case then, yeah. So to the by-election, and yeah, obviously it's been triggered by the resignation of Stephen Phillips a few weeks ago. What are your policies that you'll be putting forward to the people who will be wanting to vote this time next week?
Well, I attended the business hustings and nearly everybody was saying the same thing. Why Sleaford and North Hykeham, 8th largest constituency in the country on number of voters, and the Lincolnshire as a whole gets less money than any other county in the country.
Why do you think that is?
Well, if you look at now, I'm not from round here, I'm from East Lindsey.
Right, so
and in there, the Tory party candidate has an over 50% of the votes. Here, your previous man and the one before that, the one that fiddled his expenses, they both had over 50% of the vote. There's not any marginal seats as such. So basically, the government doesn't have to be too nice to us. Now, if you go into East Yorkshire, I'll tell you why I'm going to take East Yorkshire as an example. Just recently, there's been all on the news, parents have been asking to buy children's school books, haven't they?
Yeah.
If you lived in East Yorkshire, per child at school per year, the Education Authority gets £600 a year more.
And how would you, if you were elected, how would you look to address this? What would you do in Parliament?
Well, basically, all one can do is to stand up, make sure your voice is heard, and I've heard nobody else talking about this indifference in the education budget, and I think that's a very important thing, same as social housing. Nobody seems to be bothered about social housing.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's one of those touchy-feely subjects to some people. Now, my theory is quite simple. Currently, the last set of figures I could find are about a year old. The number of homeless people in Lincolnshire equals the number of empty properties in Lincolnshire. Or, plus or minus 5%. Yeah. But, and obviously that takes in ones where people are moving, ones that are derelict, ones that work. But I believe that every town you see developers put in plans, going to build 50, 60, 70 houses on the outskirts of the town. That won't work in low-cost social housing. It will just become a ghetto. You've only got to go to certain areas. Nearest one here will probably be parts of North Hull. I'm not running Hull down, but this is areas that I know. And I've done a bit of research on. And there they build these big estates. You go around them, all the gardens are unkept, there's junk everywhere. Now, if instead of building these big estates, they took, say, all towns, all villages, all hamlets, and according to the population of each and the number of houses, they were allocated a certain number of low-cost starter homes. I'll give you a good example. Take a village with about 100 houses in it.
And quite a few in this constituency.
Yeah, there's quite a lot like that, isn't it? About 200 people, 100 houses. Probably might have a bus service if they're very lucky. In the village I live in, we've got a lovely bus shelter, but no bus service. And, which is another thing I would like to get onto later. Now, if you allocated them, say, a village of that size, 2 to 3 brand new bits of low-cost starter home housing, get the NIMBYs, think, oh, we don't want those here. If they were built in the villages, the people that moved into them would be able to assimilate into the village, the life of the village, instead of being regarded as total outcasts. And that's a far better option than building future ghettos around the outskirts of towns. Yeah. Also, it would not be such a great strain on the infrastructure, which is pretty ropey anyway here. Yeah.
No, and moving on slightly, onto, obviously, there was the EU referendum earlier this year.
Oh, yes.
How did you vote in it?
Well, can I explain why I voted out?
So you did vote to leave? Yeah, please do.
To leave for one good reason. We wanted the third option.
What is the third option then?
In, out, shake it all about. This was our party policy. And the idea was that when the common market, note the name, was first formed, it was basically for the northern European countries that all traded together and a few around the edge, so they could trade without odd tariffs being clacked on every 6 months or something on different goods. And that was great, worked wonderfully, but gradually the bureaucrats have taken over the whole thing. They're heading towards like a United States of Europe.
You don't like the idea of that?
I don't like the cost of it. You realise that every couple of weeks they move the whole shebang from one town to another town and keep the first lot of offices open and heated and running. So, as we were not given the third option of giving the whole system a damn good shakeout,
you decided to leave it?
We decided that the best thing to do, if enough people voted out, it might scare them into doing something. As it is, this area, Lincolnshire as a whole, over 60% people think the same way, out. Now,
but not shake it all about?
Well, yes, because it is not fit for purpose. It costs far too much to run.
How much does it cost to run, just out of interest?
Well, if they ever had their account signed off for the last umpteen dozen years, we might know. You cannot find out how many people are employed. So this is just like speculation? No, it's a fact.
But we don't know exactly how many.
Well, you've got to look at some of the things. Now, you move the whole of the admin and bureaucracy from one country to another country every couple of weeks and then back again.
You don't seem to be that big a fan of bureaucracy.
What does bureaucracy produce? Only more.
More of what?
Bureaucracy. Paperwork. Red tape.
You're not a big fan of red tape or paperwork either?
No, that mainly comes from for many years around a small holding. And we were supplying goat's milk to people with dairy allergic children. And this was all okay. We called the milk, we bagged it up, had a name on it, we had quite a big goat herd. Then gradually, the red tape was brought in, and we were told that for our 30 goats that we were milking, we had to spend about £2,500 on a separate milking parlour.
What's wrong with that?
You would never get it back within about, on the outlay, and there was no need for it. But we were still allowed to sell milk to people with puppies. So you can imagine how many people that had children that were dairy allergic suddenly started asking for milk for puppies.
Shall we move on to a slightly different topic as well? It's obviously a really important one to people living in the constituency as well, the NHS and the situation at Grantham A&E.
Yeah, now what I can't understand is, I was talking to somebody that worked there, and they said the actual figures that have been quoted to them are, the reason they've shut it, they're between 17 and 20 doctors short. Now, I may be a loony, I probably am, but you don't get 17 to 20 doctors all resign in the same months, do you? They must know there was going to be a shortfall.
So who do you blame for the situation now?
I think the actual management board must take part of the blame, but it basically still comes down to central government. They're more interested in hiving off bits of it to the private sector. And you've only got to look at the number of agency staff that are now not only working in the National Health Service, in the Education Service, for the police, and I think there's quite a good ongoing case now about a certain company that organises the wages. I won't mention their name, but I think everybody knows what we're talking about. Not having cost the county a vast amount of money, and they still can't deliver what they've been paid to deliver. And even been fined for doing it, but they still get enough.
Yeah, back to the NHS quickly. Yeah. You mentioned recruitment, which is obviously important. It's also important to retain the staff. A lot of the staff working in Lincolnshire and indeed across the country come from the EU. What will happen to them with Brexit?
I have got no complaint on anybody that comes to this country to work. If the jobs are here and they can be filled from people from overseas, oh good. One thing we do need though in this area, and Lincolnshire as a whole, it would be nice to have a really nice, good teaching hospital. Now, I've got several friends whose, two of their daughters have gone into nursing, and the distances they had to travel when they were training was ridiculous.
So you'd like to bring in a medical school, I think, in summary?
Yeah, we need, for a county of this size, a proper training facility which will then feed into the NHS, but it all takes money.
Of course it does.
And we're not getting it from the government, even though we need it.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, so if I just run through a few quick ones. What would be a good result for you this time next week?
A good result for me? Well, I know I am going to increase by a colossal percentage our vote in this area, because it's the first time we've ever stood here.
And should we take you seriously?
I let people make up their own minds, but what I say is we throw out a lot of ideas, we try to bring a bit of humour and sartorial elegance.
You mentioned humour and sartorial elegance. Some voters might think that you're perhaps wasting their time by standing. What would you say to those people?
That is totally up to them, but all I would say to anybody that listens to this, if you don't usually vote, vote unusually, or if you don't usually vote, that people in this country spent years, centuries getting universal franchise to the vote. That is your right. Just go out and use your vote. I don't care. You don't have to vote for me, but just go out, and then you cannot say at a later date,
So I think your message is go out of it. Well, that's probably quite a good place to stop it. Well,
I think it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And obviously you might have caught up earlier today, and we had Victoria Ayling from UKIP and Caroline Johnson from the Conservative Party. Tomorrow we've got 5 candidates coming in, 2 independents, Lincolnshire Independent, the candidate from the Labour Party and the man from the Bus Pass Elvis Party. And yesterday, of course, we had Ross Pepper from the Liberal Democrats as well.